And we have the axiom.
And by golly, do I think literature and film, they just combine in the most amazing way. I really do think that most filmmakers, if you're trying to learn your craft, get better at making better films, you do want to be doing a couple of things. Reading poetry, so you learn how images can really shazam, light up a scene, how to learn how to compress things, and of course we study fiction in order to learn.
Reading classes is very important in film production. There's always a reason you might want to change the words, and the more words you know, the more you read, the better you're going to be at producing the script and worthy of it.
Yes, I think that, that's just one of the basics. Yes, and I think walking is important too.
I absolutely do. Reading gets communication out there to the whole crew.
Well, I think reading in this country is important not just for film production, but even if you're going into the technology world where you're reading things on the computer or not in books, whatever that may be, your phone, you have to have a basic reading foundation. Now, for film production in the movies, I think it's important that you know how to read because you're going to have scripts, you're going to have rewrites, and you're going to have situations where you're going to have to be able to look at that and read and not just assume that the first script is exactly what was written because of the changes that are made. So it's a basic fundamental foundation that you have to have a background in reading and also in writing.
Very important. Like reading classes, it not only teaches you to read, but teach you to understand what you're reading. You could get more in depth into it. You can see hidden meanings, themes, things like that. And when you're making your movie, it's you're able to put your own hidden meanings in there. That you learn from reading the classics.
So as a college student, it's important to take reading classes so that you'll be able to read through the script and understand the directions that are given that are in script that you as a student will need, or you as a filmmaker will need to be able to follow so that the director gets what he or she is looking for.
Oh yeah, I think reading classes are very important for film production because in order to make a good story, you gotta read good stories and translate those stories onto film, like they've been doing with different books like Harry Potter and whatnot. They gotta translate that literature into a film that people could watch.
Yeah, I do think reading classes are important for film production. Essentially, like writing, reading is more than just kind of looking at a page of words and sort of processing them. It's also about analysis and understanding symbolism and character development. And so when you take those skills and apply them to something like production, you're not only just assessing sets and co-workers and colleagues, you're using those critical thinking skills to sort of establish better angles, better sound devices, and things like that.
I think that reading classes are important for film production because people need to know how stories work and such. Just like a screenplay, you need to know the beginning, what you want in the beginning, the plot, the climax and stuff. So reading stories will help you figure out what you want in your story.
Yes, very, very important because you have to read a lot in order to find content. What are you going to make your movie about? So you have to have those skills to read. You have to be able to read your script. And if you're an actor, you have to be able to read your script because you're going to deliver your lines. But if you're a director, you have to be able to read that script so you know how you want to set up the camera, where it's going to happen, that's how a lot of directors communicate with other film artists. So reading is very important. I think reading is important for everybody in the film industry because I think part of it being in the film industry is about constantly refining your skills. And that means reading, the stuff that's coming out from your peers. It's reading, if you're an editor, you have to be able to read that script so you know what the flow of the script is. So I think everybody involved in a film should have those reading skills.
I do believe it is pretty important in film production. You need to know how the script works and how it flows and stuff. So that's why reading classes are pretty important. Plus you need to know the grammar and stuff of reading classes and that could help out too.
Well, I think English is important for a lot of disciplines, the way that I teach it and a lot of my colleagues, although maybe even more important for filmmakers, for film production. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Top number one, reading. It's important to gain a skill in writing. It's important to read a lot. And the more we read, the more we all can help the way that we write. It all works together. You're going to be writing screenplays, you're going to be reading screenplays, and so the more practice you have of reading, the better that can be. Also with reading, there's a sense too of when we look for ideas for our screenplays, for our film project, when we're thinking of ideas, developing, some visions for our projects, we can get a lot of help. We can garner assistance from what we read. Just like a songwriter, a poet, or any writer will gain information. A lot of that could come from reading. And even read novel, like Yevgeny Zamyatin's novel We from 1921 is a terrific dystopian novel that's been copied, but no one has ever made a film of that. So every time I teach it, every 2 years, I'm thinking of, damn, this could be a dynamite screenplay if we could just do this, this, and that, right? So I could see really making a film right from that book. So there's often that kind of connection.
I think the reading process is extremely important to film production. Whether you are aspiring to be an independent filmmaker or work in a big production team, I think it's really important. First of all, I think that filmmakers should be educated. There are plenty of books out there on filmmaking. If you're thinking about becoming a filmmaker, you might want to read up on it first before you actually jump in. Also, a director is actually taking written words and creating a vision in their head and then projecting that in a film. So that's extremely important. You have to be able to read, not only to read, but to analyze and interpret. Same is true for the film, the production managers and the actors. The actors need to be able to read a script and actually internalize what's the character and act out that character. Many aspects of reading in film production, stage directions, the ability to read stage directions or instructions on how to set up the set. I just think there are many roles in the film industry, and whether you're independent or non-independent, you're going to have to be able to read and interpret and analyze in order to make a quality film.
I would say reading courses would probably provide anyone who takes a reading course with certain analytical skills. And I feel that the production of film is so much about analysis, right? Understanding that many people come into the film watching experience as kind of a reader of kind of visual rhetoric. Their understanding of what to take from a film comes from some of the techniques they use when they read something. So whether it's their ability to comprehend or to retain the information from what they're seeing and use it in later scenes, right? Understanding what's going on in the plot and taking that to later moments and understanding the film itself in a deeper way because they were able to synthesize the information that was given to them via the filmmaker, either from images or through the script itself. But I do believe any good film producer or creator should be someone who has kind of studied the way that we understand or analyze a text visually and as well as the actual script itself in terms of dialogue.
We study fiction in order to learn how crisp, distinct, succinct dialogue really can help propel things forward. I think there's a lot more, I'll say, collaboration between the arts than people may suspect. And of course, think of all the Hollywood movies that started out not just as comic books, but originally as novels. If we didn't have the entire body of Western tradition of novels, I think we'd lose about 50% of film right there. Whether you're making documentary films, feature-length films, shorts, studying literature always can help enhance your linguistic sense, sharpen your ability to use images, and I think help just round out your cultural literacy.
English is a very powerful language. It's been the King's English for centuries. It's very important that such a wide audience desires to hear the English language. Yes, I feel it's very important.
Yes. I mean, and now for the long version, why I think it is storyboards. You want to be able to write storyboards. You want to be able to write a story. You know, shooting video, that's easy stuff. You know, but creating a script and creating the idea, the storyboard, and putting it all down. That's the stuff that requires you to log, right?
Yes, very important. Once again, it comes down to information and communication to everybody involved in the project.
Well, I think the thing with and I'm not a movie expert by any means, but just being an instructor here at Antelope Valley College, it's important that my students know how to read and absorb that reading and understand what the words mean, so they can go out there and do their job as police officers, probation, or parole. If you're reading a script and you don't know what the words mean, you're not going to be able to act those situations out. So you're going to have to be able to process the reading of whatever the director and the writers are giving you as that movie star or that actor, and then go out there and act it, knowing what they're expecting of you from the writing material.
Very important. Not just reading, but writing. Rhetoric, learning, reading, speeches, or, even reading, philosophy or things like that. It's really good influence. It's going to influence you when you're reading, when you're writing your scripts, and when you're even filming. Like sometimes just descriptions about things, scenery and backdrop and location.
Being able to understand and produce English is important. You'll be both reading and anything that lives on script. You'll be talking with all of the actors. You'll be talking with the directors, with the producers, etc., to be able to produce your movie. English classes are good to take because they help you not only understand English itself, but because you're often dealing in literature, and it is often literature that turns into a movie. The more exposure you have to that, the better.
This works hand in hand with film production because, in order to make a good film, you gotta, write good, explain things in detail, make good dialogue. Pretty much everything revolves around English.
English? Yeah, in general, I mean, at least, when it comes to writing, again, I think of writing as more than just putting words on a piece of paper with a pen or a keyboard. Because again, those same skills, I always tell my students the least important thing they're going to do in any of my classes is write an essay, which is ironic because, we write essays, but again, writing is assessing a situation, evaluating criteria, and then adding to that discussion and creating some new avenue or aspect to the situation. And so in production, there's a lot that goes on. I've never worked on a film, but I've worked in the film industry, and I've worked with production crews from a legal standpoint. And I know, there's a lot on the back end when it comes to communication skills and, dealing with people on a day-to-day basis. And understanding, a big part of any job is going to be problems. And so if you have critical thinking skills to sort of assess situations and solve problems, that always is going to help you.
I think that English is also important in film production because not only is it important to learn grammar, but it's also important to know how English, reading is important. So I think that taking English classes also enhances your understanding of making films and also writing films and understanding the background of stories, which is what films are.
English as a course. Yes, I do, because all film production has a writing component to it, from writing a script to communicating through writing on your script. So if you're a director and you have your script, you're going to use that script, you're going to read that script, and you need to be able to communicate with everybody. I think English as a skill, but if you're Spanish, if you're from Mexico and you're making a movie, obviously everybody should be able to speak Spanish, right? So I think that English is a very important skill for film.
Yeah, it's pretty important because again, you need to know the grammar and stuff when working on a movie. You can't just say random stuff and expect it to reach the audience all the way.
The same kind of thing. When you're reading novels and short stories, the fiction that we read in many English classes, we read a lot of nonfiction too. But you're looking at how people work their story. Where do they make their cuts? It's not just in films that people edit and TV and so forth. But when we write a story of any type, we're always trying to figure out, where do we stop the scene? What are we looking at? What perspective are we at? I've gone the other direction. I've read a billion things, and I've been writing for 40 years, and I've been writing screenplays for like the last 8. But I'm going back. When I write my novels, I find that they are informed by movies. I'm sort of going the other way, so it can work both ways. What we get out of movies can help our writing. What we do with our writing can help with our movies, including editing.
Well, I think English is really important as well. If you're going to be a script writer, you're going to have to write a script. You're going to have to know proper punctuation. Otherwise, the actors or the directors won't be able to interpret what you've written and envision it. Also, it's a form of communication to be able to write and propose and interpret whatever you're doing as far as your production job. English is important in the film industry.
I most definitely do think English classes are fundamental to someone's understanding of how to work with storylines, narrative, tropes, and characters, and how do characters find themselves fully realized on screen. I think through a lot of reading you can get so many ideas about how a character should proceed in a film, or how dialogue should be read or captured, but you won't really get that understanding purely just by watching a lot of movies. I think that reading can actually be an incredible part of the learning process for a filmmaker, because the more you read and deal with literature, the more you do understand characters on a more detailed scale, and then you can do the shorthanding. You can take those characters and condense them into a film version of something that you may have seen in the written word, right? But I do think it's important that filmmakers and film producers spend a good amount of time with English and literature, just so that they can understand the power of language and the way that you can use language in the shaping of a scene, characters, and what happens to them. So I do think that if a person has a good background in analyzing literature or seeing how literature operates, they're going to be better and better at telling stories.
For those people who are working on scripts, of course, there are script writing classes in the classic 3-part structure. We understand how that is. You want to arrive at a resolution. And I think the more literature you read, the more options you'll get in terms of quick launches, surprising endings. You want the ending to feel inevitable, earned, and yet also be a fresh surprise each time the person comes to it. So these are all things that make literature really useful for script writers.
For a script writer, you gotta know how to write. You gotta know all the words. You gotta be familiar with the language so you can fit it together. It's like some sort of unseen poetry, how it all fits together.
You cannot be a script writer if you can't write. So I guess it's really important.
It is in the job. Would you apply for a cartoonist if you don't know how to draw? That's basically how I would put it.
Absolutely. I would think that you have a sister that's a screenwriter, script writer, and she explains to me that you have to have a knowledge of first of all, what the directors want and what those people actually want specific, a foundation of subject matter to write on, and be able to write sometimes lengthy pieces that complete a whole story, and short, like sentence structures that are quick, that you can read and understand in a fast manner.
I actually wrote a movie for the Antelope Valley College Film Club. I had some assistance from Scott Covell, but it's really important to just come up with, like I was making a comedy, so you have to know, a lot of, you have to figure out, which words are funnier, which, the way you arrange it, you have to try to make it as funny as possible. And I think, reading in general, helps you learn more words that you can put into there, to make it sound funnier.
So taking writing classes at college is especially helpful to you if you want to write a script, because you need to be able to produce the grammatically correct English that's going to be read by the actors. You also need to be able to write down any kind of directions that goes into the script. And so if you're not a fluent writer, then writing a script will be especially challenging, and that's why taking classes at college such as script writing and English simultaneously can help you be able to produce the kind of script you want. so that maybe you'll be bought and it'll turn into a movie in Hollywood.
It's probably very important because they be writing most of their time, you know? Like writing scripts, many pages of, you know, words and dialogue that you have to go through and sequences, and that, you know, it gets translated into the film. So yeah, I think it's super important to be a good writer.
If you want to be a scriptwriter, I think it's essential that writing is part of your skill set, but I think anybody can obtain that skill set. As far as the value, yeah, I mean, you know, scriptwriting is a very creative process, but again, it's also a critical thinking process where you're understanding characters and you're understanding the way that plot devices can work, and not only that, but rhetorical strategy. And so you're not only trying to show a story, you're trying to show a story that an audience is going to enjoy and want more of. And so that is definitely something you would learn through writing, is, you know, getting people to not only see your piece but react to your piece.
I think it's very important to learn how to write if you're going to be a scriptwriter, because people need to understand, you need to be able to translate what you want on the script, and people need to understand what you're trying to get out there, so I think that's why it's important.
It's very important to know how to write, because that is what screenwriters do, is they write. And when you write a screenplay has a specific kind of format. And that format, the way that it's formatted, is to help all the other artists on the movie bring to life what they're, you know, going to do, what their job is. So it has to be written down. Now, one of the things in Hollywood is, for screenwriters, is one of the things that if you send a script to Hollywood, they will reject your script if it's not grammatically correct, right? So they look for all of those kind of things. They're looking for good writers. So it's essential to being, you know, a screenwriter especially.
Crazy important. Again, like writing screenplays and stuff is like the major part of making a movie. You gotta know the grammar and how it flows, and if it doesn't feel right, then it's probably not gonna look right on the screen. And yeah, screenplay and writing scripts is the major, it's pretty important.
Number two, writing is important for all disciplines in college, and we of course teach that as writing English. Obviously, with the screenplay, there's a format, just like we have a format for writing essays. It's a different format. It's different from short stories. It's different from anything. However, you do need to try to be grammatically correct, to keep the focus going, to tell a story, right? To be able to have it be an interesting story. And with the screenplay, maybe you don't have a lot of description, unless you're Quentin Tarantino. Although I like to have a lot of description of things in my screenplays, being a novel writer too. It you know makes it easier for you to develop your ideas and have other people understand what you're getting at, particularly actors, filmmakers, etc. By having a good, clean script that's relatively free of grammar errors, but it's also a well-developed story and well-developed characters, right? So writing for English is the best place, other than screenplay writing, right, for that kind of experience and practice in developing your ideas in any type of narrative form, like writing a screenplay for a film.
Without that, I don't know how you would be a scriptwriter. You're going to have to, it can be very difficult setting up a scene to make it realistic, so that it can be understood, not only by the production team, but by the people watching the film, so that they'll know it would be difficult if I was a script writer and I had a vision of something I wanted to put onto paper, so that it could be enacted. It would be very frustrating if I could not put that down so that it can be communicated to others.
And, script writing can come in a lot of different forms. I'm not a film expert, but there is a certain mastery that you have to have of the human voice. It depends on your subject matter, right? So maybe you're dealing with a film where intellectuals are at the core, and so you want to be able to write in an authentic version of the voice of the characters that you're trying to depict. And then you might be working on something that's a little bit more raw. You're trying to capture something that's happening on the streets of Los Angeles, or you're looking at the favelas in Brazil. But either way, your ability to capture those voices and to write a script that's appropriate or authentic, or that really lends itself to a deeper understanding of those characters, you have to be able to write well to capture those voices. So writing, in the case of script writing, is fundamental. Some people are going to be able to capture great things on film, but really great writers probably will be able to capture it more adeptly with strong